My fiancé told me to lose weight or the wedding is off. I lost 190 pounds of dead weight instantly. I stood in the center of the high-end bridal boutique, squeezed into a gown that felt like a cage. My chest ached as I looked at my reflection. At 55, I knew I wasn't the young athlete I used to be, but I thought I was beautiful. My fiancé, Jake, stood behind me with a look of pure disgust on his face. He didn't see the woman who had supported him for 5 years. He only saw the fabric straining against my hips. "The seams are screaming, Janet," he hissed, loud enough for the other shoppers to hear. "If you don't drop 30 pounds by the wedding in 2 months, don't even bother showing up at the church. I won't be the guy marrying the before picture in front of all my friends." My heart shattered right there in the silk and lace. He turned to the skinny sales clerk and gave her a slow, cruel wink. "Maybe you should show her the plus-size section in the basement," he said. The humiliation didn't stop at the dress shop. A few days later, we were at the supermarket. I reached for a box of whole-grain pasta, thinking about a healthy dinner we could share. Before my fingers could even touch the box, Jake slammed his hand down, knocking it out of my grip. It clattered onto the floor, drawing stares from people in the aisle. "Carbs are for people who actually care about their appearance, Janet," he barked. He grabbed the cart and filled it with nothing but bags of celery and bottles of plain water. I felt like a child being scolded in public. My face burned with a heat that wouldn't go away. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen aggressively. He handed it to me, showing a weight tracker app login. "I set this up for you," he sneered. But I saw the notification settings. The account was linked directly to his phone so he could monitor every single calorie I ate in real time. As I stared at the water bottles, my mind drifted back to a year ago. I used to be athletic and fit. Everything changed the night of the accident. We were driving home when a drunk driver swerved into our lane. I had reacted instantly, pulling the steering wheel to take the hit on my side to save Jake's life. The recovery was long and painful. The heavy medications and the months of being unable to walk slowed my metabolism to a crawl. I gained weight while I was learning to use my legs again. During those dark days in the hospital, Jake would sit by my bed and hold my hand. He looked into my eyes and whispered words I actually believed. "I love you for your soul, Janet," he had promised. "Your body doesn't matter to me as long as you are alive." I realized now that he was just a talented liar. The supportive fiancé was gone, replaced by a monster. Jake started forcing me to the gym at 5 a.m. every single morning. He called himself my trainer, but it felt more like being in a labor camp. He would stand behind me while I was on the treadmill, screaming at me to go faster even when my legs felt like lead. My joints, still tender from the accident, throbbed with every step. While I struggled and sweated, Jake would wander off to the yoga area. He spent more time flirting with the young women in their tight leggings than he did watching me. I was a project to him, something to be fixed and shamed. One morning, the world started spinning. My vision went black, and I fainted from pure exhaustion. When I woke up on the cold floor, Jake didn't help me up. He just looked down at his watch. "Stop being dramatic," he muttered. "That's only 100 calories burned." That night, the house felt colder than usual. I lay in bed, my muscles twitching from the workout. I felt so lonely and small. I reached out across the sheets, trying to touch Jake's arm, just seeking a little bit of human comfort or a kind word. He pulled away instantly, as if my touch was something gross. "I don't touch soft things, Janet," he said into the darkness. His voice was like ice. "Get to your goal weight, and maybe then I'll remember why I bothered to propose to you in the first place." He turned his back to me, the light from his phone screen glowing in the dark room. I watched from behind as he started scrolling through the thirst trap photos of a famous fitness influencer. He didn't even care that I was crying right behind him. Hit subscribe for more revenge stories. The next morning, Jake left his old phone in the junk drawer while he went for a run. My heart hammered in my chest as I pulled it out. It was an older model, but it was still logged into all his social apps. I felt sick to my stomach as I opened a group chat titled The Bachelor Bet. My eyes scanned the messages, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Jake had been talking about me to his friends like I was a piece of livestock. He had made a bet with 4 other men for $5,000. He told them he could bully me back into a size 2 by the wedding date through pure shame. He joked about how easy it was to manipulate me because of my accident. The final message made me gasp. He told his friends that if I didn't hit the goal, he would dump me at the altar just for the clout. I kept scrolling, deeper into the digital filth of his life. I noticed he was obsessed with one particular fitness influencer named Chloe. Then, I saw the private messages between them. My breath hitched. Chloe wasn't just some random girl online, she was his ex-girlfriend from years ago. They were working together. Jake was actually paying Chloe to send me anonymous hate comments on my Instagram posts. He wanted to destroy my self-esteem from every angle to motivate me. One message from Chloe to Jake said, "I sent her the one about her looking like a whale. She's so pathetic." Another message she sent directly to my private inbox read, "He's only with you because he feels guilty about the accident. Make it easy for him and disappear." They were laughing at my pain behind my back. I realized my life with him was built on a foundation of cruel, calculated lies. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried until no more tears would come. But then, something inside me snapped. I stopped crying and stood up. I went to the pantry and grabbed a real box of crackers and some cheese. I ate a full, real meal for the first time in weeks. As I chewed, I felt the fog in my brain start to clear. I wasn't weak, I was a survivor who had pulled a steering wheel to save a man who wasn't worth a penny. My strength began to return, flowing through my veins like fire. I looked at the weight tracker app on my own phone and smiled a dark, cold smile. I realized in that moment that I didn't need to lose body fat to be happy. I needed to lose exactly 190 pounds of man-child that was weighing down my entire existence. The real weight loss journey was about to begin. I decided to play the long game. To catch a snake, you have to let it think you are prey. I started wearing thick waist trainers and baggy sweatshirts around the house. I made sure to look exhausted and sad whenever Jake was around. I wanted him to believe his bullying was working perfectly. When he told me I looked like a tired old rug, I just lowered my head and whispered, "You're right, Jake. I'm finally seeing the real you." He took it as a compliment, puffing out his chest like a proud king. He had no idea that I was recording every mean word he said on a hidden device. I became the perfect, subservient fiancé, nodding at his insults while I planned his total destruction in my head. I was a ghost in my own home, waiting for the right moment to haunt him forever. While Jake was busy preening in front of the mirror, I started digging into our finances. My father had provided a $50,000 wedding fund as a gift to help us start our life together. It was supposed to be in a joint account. When I logged in, I saw that the balance was nearly gone. Jake had been slowly siphoning the money off to pay for his own secret credit card debts and expensive gym memberships. He was literally stealing my father's hard-earned money to fund his fake high-roller lifestyle. Luckily, he hadn't noticed that my personal disability settlement from the accident had just cleared in a separate account. I acted quickly. I moved the remaining wedding funds and all my settlement money into a private account at a different bank. The bridal shower was held at a fancy tea room. I sat there in a loose dress, pretending to be the fragile woman Jake wanted. Jake's mother, Martha, looked at the tray of appetizers and made a loud, sking sound. "I hope you aren't eyeing those fatty crab puffs, Janet. Jake says you finally started taking your health seriously." The room went quiet as all my friends stared. Instead of shrinking, I felt a surge of cold energy. I reached out, grabbed a chocolate cupcake with extra frosting, and took a huge, slow bite right in front of everyone. I smiled through the crumbs. Jake looked like he was going to explode in front of the guests. His face turned a deep, angry purple. He walked over and gripped my shoulder too hard, leaning down to whisper in my ear, "You just ruined a month of progress, you pig. No dinner for a week when we get home." I didn't care about his threats because I was busy hiring a secret team. I didn't hire a personal trainer, I hired a life audit investigator. I wanted to know every single secret Jake was hiding before I walked down that aisle. Within 3 days, the investigator sent me a file that made my jaw drop. Jake had been telling everyone he was a high-powered lawyer, but the truth was much pathetic. He had never actually graduated from the law school he claimed to attend. He had failed out in his first year. His entire high-paying job at the firm was actually just a low-level clerk position, and he had been fired months ago for laziness. He had been waking up every morning, putting on a suit, and living off my disability settlement money while pretending to be a success. His whole life was a giant, hollow theater performance built on my back. I decided to play the part of the grateful fiancé one last time to seal his fate. I waited until he was feeling smug after a workout and brought him a stack of papers. "Since we are starting a life together, I had a lawyer draft a revised marriage contract for our future home," I told him with a shy smile. He barely looked at the pages, his ego blinded by the idea that he had trained me. He thought it was just a document about property rights, but I had hidden a very specific clause in the middle of the legal jargon. By signing it, he was legally acknowledging that he owed me for every single cent of the wedding fund he had embezzled. He scribbled his name with a flourish, laughing about how he was the man of the house. He had no idea he was signing his own financial death warrant. It was finally the evening before the wedding. Jake went out to his bachelor party, and I used a spare key to check the location. He was at a loud bar, bragging to his friends and toasty with expensive champagne he couldn't afford. "I've got her trained," I heard him shout over the music. "She's so terrified of losing me that she'll do anything. I'm going to collect that $5,000 tomorrow and then decide if I even want to keep her around." He was laughing at me, unaware that I was standing in the shadows of the hallway. I pulled out my phone and sent him a single text message. "I have a surprise for you at the altar tomorrow, Jake. You won't believe how much weight I lost." He laughed and showed the text to his friends, thinking he had won the war. The morning of the wedding arrived. The church was packed with our families, his lawyer friends, and my social circle. Jake stood at the front of the church in a tuxedo that I had paid for, looking incredibly smug. He kept checking his watch, probably thinking about the $5,000 bet he was about to win from his buddies in the front row. He adjusted his cufflinks and smirked at the crowd, waiting for the grand entrance of his perfectly trained bride. The organist began to play, and the heavy wooden doors at the back of the church slowly creaked open. The entire congregation turned around, gasping in anticipation. But there was no music. No white dress appeared. Instead, a young boy in a small suit walked down the aisle alone, holding a gift-wrapped box. Jake watched the young boy approach with a confused frown. He reached out and took the gift-wrapped box, his hand steady because he still thought he was in control. The entire church was silent, the air thick with tension. Jake tore off the silver paper and opened the lid, expecting perhaps a watch or a sentimental note. Instead, his face went pale as he stared down at a standard white bathroom scale. Taped to the glass was a small, bright yellow note in my handwriting that simply said, "Step on it." He looked up, searching the empty doorway for me, but I wasn't there. He tried to laugh it off, turning to his friends with a nervous grin, but no one laughed back. He felt the eyes of every guest burning into him as the confusion in the room turned into a heavy, uncomfortable cloud of whispers. Before Jake could move, the gift inside the box shifted. It wasn't just a scale, it was a tablet propped up against the side. Suddenly, the giant screens on either side of the altar flickered to life. A video began to play at full volume, echoing through the sacred space. It wasn't a montage of our love story. It was a screen recording of the Bachelor Bet group chat. The congregation gasped as they read Jake's messages calling me a whale and a project. Then, the screen showed his private messages with Chloe, revealing their plan to harass me into a size 2. Jake's boss from the law firm where he was actually a clerk sat in the front row, his mouth hanging open in horror. The digital evidence of Jake's cruelty was now being broadcast to every person he had ever tried to impress. Then, my voice boomed over the church's professional sound system, loud and steady. "I did it, Jake. I lost exactly 190 pounds today. That's your body weight, plus the weight of your massive, fragile ego." The video cut to a new clip of me. I wasn't in a wedding dress. I was at the airport, wearing a comfortable sun hat and a bright floral top. I looked glowing, healthy, and genuinely happy. I held up a first-class ticket to Hawaii and blew a kiss to the camera. "I'm going on the honeymoon alone, Jake, because I finally realized that I am not a before picture. I am the prize you just lost." The sight of me looking so empowered and free made Jake's knees buckle. He looked small and pathetic standing there under the weight of his own exposed lies and shattered reputation. The video wasn't done yet. It ended with a crystal-clear image of the marriage contract Jake had signed without reading. A red circle appeared around the clause where he admitted to embezzling the wedding funds. My voice returned, cold as steel. "And since there is no wedding, the debt is due immediately. The police are waiting in the vestibule for the wedding fund embezzlement report I filed this morning." Jake's head snapped toward the back of the church. The smugness was completely gone, replaced by a look of sheer, frantic terror. He tried to run toward the side exit, hoping to escape the cameras and the judgment, but he didn't get far. My 2 brothers, both former college football players, stepped out from the shadows and blocked the door. They stood with their arms crossed, staring him down with looks of pure, righteous fury. The scene turned into total chaos. 2 police officers entered the church and walked straight up the aisle. Jake was led out in front of everyone, his hands cuffed behind his tuxedo jacket. Just as they reached the door, We saw Chloe, the fitness influencer, being escorted by another officer. I had reported her for online harassment and tax evasion on her secret coaching fees. Her fake, filtered beauty was gone. She was screaming and crying, looking just as ugly on the outside as she had been on the inside. "You told me she was a loser," she shrieked at Jake as they were forced into separate patrol cars. The bachelor bet was over, and the house of cards had finally come crashing down. The air in Hawaii was sweet and carried the scent of hibiscus. I sat on a white sandy beach, watching the turquoise waves roll in. I looked down at my body, seeing the scars on my side from the car accident. For the first time in a year, I didn't feel the need to hide them or feel ashamed. I had curves, I had strength, and I had my life back. I ordered a huge, juicy burger from the beach shack and took a bite. It tasted like absolute victory. The sun warmed my skin, and the silence from my phone was the best gift I had ever received. As I wiped a bit of sauce from my lip, I saw a man walking toward me. He looked familiar, but it took me a moment to place him without his white coat. It was Dr. Liam, the surgeon who saved me. Dr. Liam sat down on the sand near my chair, looking surprised but happy to see me. "Janet, you look incredible," he said softly. We talked for a while about my recovery, and then his expression became serious. "I have to be honest with you," he started, looking out at the ocean. "I always wondered why you stayed with Jake after the accident. He was so pushy back then." I tilted my head, confused by his tone. Then he dropped a bombshell that made my blood run cold. "He was the one who insisted we give you those specific appetite stimulants during your initial recovery. He told us you had a history of eating disorders and needed the extra weight to heal, even though your charts didn't show it." My heart stopped. Jake hadn't just watched me gain weight, he had gone to the doctors to make sure it happened. I felt a wave of nausea hit me as the truth settled in. Jake had been gaslighting me for an entire year. He made me believe my own body was failing me and that my metabolism was broken because of the trauma. In reality, he was secretly sabotaging my health from the very beginning. He wanted me to be heavy and insecure so that I would feel lucky to have him. He wanted me dependent on him so I wouldn't notice he was stealing my money. It was a calculated, medical betrayal that went deeper than I ever imagined. I looked at Dr. Liam, my eyes filling with a new kind of fire. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was about a crime against my soul. I thanked the doctor and immediately pulled out my laptop. I was going to file a formal complaint that would strip Jake's life bare. The peace of Hawaii was over, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I returned home a week later, ready to finish what I started. I found out through my lawyer that Jake was out on bail, thanks to his mother's dwindling savings. He hadn't even waited a day before moving back into my apartment. He actually had the nerve to tell the police that it was our home and that he had a right to be there until the legalities were sorted out. He thought he could squat in my space and wait for me to soften up. He thought I was still the same Janet who would fold under pressure. But I didn't even go to the apartment. I drove straight to the landlord's office with a copy of the police report and a very specific Section 8 violation. The grand reckoning began on a Tuesday morning. I stood on the sidewalk across from my building and watched the scene unfold. The landlord and 2 officers arrived at my front door. Since Jake wasn't on the lease and was facing felony charges, he was served with an immediate eviction notice for illegal occupation. 10 minutes later, the door flew open. Jake was literally thrown out of the apartment into the hallway, wearing nothing but his gym underwear and a t-shirt. He looked pathetic and small without his expensive suits. The movers I hired followed right behind him, carrying boxes. But they didn't hand them to him. They began tossing all his protein supplements, his heavy gym gear, and his trendy sneakers directly into the street. Jake stood on the sidewalk, shivering in his underwear as neighbors pointed and laughed. I didn't stop at just kicking him out. I had spent the flight home from Hawaii building a website. I bought a domain name that was easy for anyone to find, https://www.google.com/search?Q=jakethefake.com. I uploaded everything. I posted the scan of his failed law school transcripts, the police report for the embezzled wedding funds, and the medical notes about the stimulants. I even included a screen recording of the Bachelor Bet group chat so the whole world could see his true character. Within hours, the link was being shared by everyone in our city. It went viral on social media, reaching every local business and gym. By the time the sun went down, Jake was a social pariah. He couldn't even get a job as a gym janitor because no one wanted a thief and a bully in their building. The damage spread like a wildfire, hitting Chloe just as hard. She lost over 500,000 followers overnight as her sponsors realized she was part of a cruel harassment ring. Her fitness empire crumbled in a matter of days. Companies that once paid her thousands for a single post sent her legal notices terminating their contracts. But the best part was the fallout between the two villains. Chloe was furious that Jake's stupidity had ruined her career. She filed a massive lawsuit against him for ruining her brand and exposing their private messages. They turned on each other like starving wolves, spending their remaining hours in courtrooms screaming and hurling insults. I sat back and watched as they destroyed each other's lives far more effectively than I ever could have done alone. They were finally getting a taste of the misery they had fed me. Next, I went after his pride and joy, his luxury car. Jake had been driving a sleek black sports car that he claimed he bought with his lawyer salary. In reality, I was the one who had co-signed the loan, and my disability settlement had been paying the monthly installments. I stopped the automatic payments immediately and called the bank to report his location. A few days later, while Jake was waiting at a bus stop, the tow truck arrived. He chased after it, screaming and waving his arms, but it didn't matter. The car was repossessed right in front of a crowd of commuters. He was forced to take the city bus to his court hearings, sitting on the plastic seats next to the very people he used to look down upon. His life of fake luxury had officially reached its final stop at the end of a very long, dusty road. The phone rang late one night, and I saw it was Jake's mother, Martha. She was crying hysterically, her voice thin and shaking. She told me that she had spent her retirement savings on Jake's bail and legal fees, and now they were facing homelessness. She begged me to show some Christian mercy and give them a place to stay or a small loan to get by. I remembered how she had called me a pig at my own bridal shower and how she had mocked my weight in front of my friends. I didn't feel a single spark of pity. I simply sent her a link to a high-end weight loss retreat that cost $10,000 a week. I followed it with a short text: "Maybe if you lose the entitlement weight, Martha, you'll find the strength to get a job." I blocked her number before she could reply. With the trash finally cleared out of my life, I started a real fitness journey. This time, it wasn't about shame or hitting a size 2 for a man who didn't love me. It was about strength, joy, and reclaiming the body that had saved a life. I joined a local running club for accident survivors. We didn't focus on calories, we focused on the miracle of being able to move our legs. 6 months later, I signed up for a marathon. As I crossed the halfway point, I saw a haggard, thin man sitting on a park bench on the sidelines. It was Jake. He looked like he hadn't slept or eaten a real meal in weeks. The stress of the lawsuits had aged him 20 years. He looked at me with hollow eyes, but I didn't slow down. I just kept running, leaving his shadow behind me in the dust. After the race ended, I was walking to my car when a shadow blocked my path. It was Jake. He looked terrible. His expensive clothes were replaced by a stained hoodie and frayed jeans. He tried to corner me against my car door, his hands trembling. "Janet, wait. I've been trying to reach you," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I was just trying to help you be your best self. Everything I did was for us, for our future. I still love you, Janet. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." I stared at him and let out a long, loud laugh that echoed through the parking lot. It felt amazing. "You don't love me, Jake," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "You don't even know what love is. You just love the control you lost, and you're mad that your meal ticket finally grew a spine." The day of the final court case arrived, and the room was packed with reporters. I sat in the front row, wearing a tailored suit that made me feel like a queen. Jake stood before the judge, looking broken and defeated. The evidence of his embezzlement and the medical tampering was undeniable. When the judge asked for his final statement, Jake didn't apologize to me. Instead, he tried to blame me, claiming I had tempted him with my money and that my weight gain had pushed him to the edge. The judge's face turned stony with disgust. "Your lack of remorse is chilling, Mr. Carter," the judge declared. He sentenced Jake to 2 years in state prison for the theft and the reckless endangerment of my health. He added another 6 months to the sentence just for Jake's disgraceful behavior in a courtroom. Justice had finally spoken. While Jake was being processed for prison, I moved forward with my civil case against Chloe. My lawyer was relentless, presenting every hateful message and every recorded conversation to the court. We won a massive defamation suit against her, totaling nearly $300,000. Chloe sat at her table, her head in her hands, as the judge delivered the verdict. But the money wasn't the best part. As part of the settlement, Chloe was legally required to film a public apology video. She had to explain exactly how she harassed me and admit that her fitness coaching was a scam built on lies. She had to post that video to the top of her influencer page every single day for a full year. Her reputation was permanently stained, and her career as a public figure was officially over for good. A few weeks later, I received a phone call from Liam, the doctor who had helped me uncover the truth. He wasn't calling about medical records this time. "Janet, I've been thinking about you a lot," he said, sounding a bit nervous. "I'd really like to take you out for a real dinner. No scales, no talk of calorie counting, and definitely no talk about the past. Just two people enjoying a meal." I smiled, feeling a flutter in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. We went to a cozy Italian restaurant and sat for hours, talking about travel, books, and our dreams for the future. He didn't look at my plate or my waistline once. Instead, he looked at my eyes and told me I was the strongest, most beautiful person he had ever met in his life. I decided to use the settlement money from Chloe and the returned wedding funds for something meaningful. I didn't want to just sit on the cash. I wanted to help other women who had been through the same kind of gaslighting and trauma I had survived. I bought an old, sun-drenched building downtown and spent months renovating it. I opened a holistic recovery center specifically designed for women recovering from major accidents and emotional abuse. It wasn't a place for dieting or shame. It was a place for healing, physical therapy, and reclaiming power. I stood at the front door on opening day, looking at the sign I had specially commissioned. I named it the 190 Center, a permanent reminder of the exact weight I had shed to find my true self again. Hit subscribe for the final victory. On the 1-year anniversary of the day I was supposed to marry a monster, I hosted a massive celebration at my new center. I didn't want a somber event. I wanted a party that radiated light and freedom. I invited all the women from the center, my family, and the friends who had stood by me during the investigation. The theme of the evening was light as air. I decorated the entire space with white lilies and floating silk lanterns that danced in the breeze. Every guest was asked to wear white and, most importantly, to bring a small slip of paper. On that paper, they wrote down one thing they wanted to shed: a fear, a bad memory, or a lie someone had told them. We gathered in the courtyard as the sun set, and one by one, we released those burdens into a small, beautiful fire. I felt lighter with every breath. A few days after the party, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. I recognized the return address immediately. It was from the state prison where Jake was serving his time. My hands didn't shake as I tore it open. Inside was a long, rambling letter written on cheap, lined paper. Jake was begging me for money for the commissary, complaining that the prison food was terrible and that the other inmates were mean to him. He tried one last time to use his old charms, telling me he missed my cooking and our special bond. He actually had the nerve to ask me to visit him so we could talk things through. I didn't even read the second page. I walked to the kitchen, took a picture of a vibrant, healthy green salad I had just prepared, and mailed it back to him with no return address. Life continued to get better as I focused on my own well-being. I spent a lot of time in the weight room at my center, not to get skinny, but to get powerful. One morning, I stood in front of the squat rack and loaded the bar with more weight than I had ever lifted before. As I felt the heavy steel across my shoulders, I took a deep breath and pushed. I hit a new personal best, the muscles in my legs and back firing with perfect precision. I realized in that moment that I was physically and mentally stronger now than I had ever been, even before the car accident. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and didn't see a size or a number on a scale. I saw a survivor with eyes like flint and a heart that could no longer be broken by small men. By the end of the year, the dust had completely settled. Chloe's social media career was officially dead, and she had moved away in shame after her public apology tour ended. Jake's name was nothing more than a local punchline, a warning story for other women in the city. He had been forgotten by everyone who once claimed to be his friend. I realized that keeping the Jake the Fake website active was no longer necessary. I had achieved my justice, and holding onto the anger felt like carrying a heavy stone I didn't need anymore. I sat at my desk, took a final look at the thousands of comments supporting me, and hit the delete button. He wasn't even worth the monthly hosting fee anymore. I swam, I cycled, and then I ran. As I approached the finish line, I saw Liam waiting there with a massive bouquet of my favorite flowers and a proud smile. I crossed the line and felt the medal being placed around my neck. I am not a size 2, but I have never felt lighter in my entire life. The wedding was off, but my life finally started. Thank you. Please like, share and subscribe for more. Also turn on your notification bell so you be the first to get our next shocking revenge story.